All right, let's talk about Greek architecture. You know, it's one of those things you see everywhere, even if you don't always realize it. From huge government buildings to museums, it's a style that has pretty much defined what classical beauty means for thousands of years.
But have you ever really stopped and just looked at one and wondered why? Why do buildings like the Parthenon, even when they're in ruins, feel so perfect? There's this incredible sense of balance and harmony that just feels almost supernatural.
Well, here's the thing. It wasn't magic, it was math. The ancient Greeks came up with a very specific formula, an architectural code, really, to create that feeling of harmony. They literally engineered the feeling of beauty. So let's dive in and actually uncover these secrets. We're going to look at the code they used to build this incredible idea of perfection. You know, their genius really came down to three main things. First, they were obsessed with getting the proportions just right, which you can see in their different styles or orders, like the really sturdy Doric, the more elegant Ionic, and the super ornate Corinthian. Second, they built everything on clear mathematical ratios, famously using things like the golden ratio to make sure every part of the building looked good next to every other part. And third, and this is my favorite part, they use these unbelievably sophisticated optical corrections. Let's just hang on that last point for a minute, because this is what is so mind-blowing about Greek architecture. They knew something really important. The human eye can be fooled. They knew a perfectly long straight line will look like it's sagging in the middle to us. So they weren't just building with stone. They were building for our perception. They were building illusions. A perfect example of this is a technique called entasis. See, to stop a column from looking like it's too thin or weak in the middle, they would intentionally build it with a slight bulge, a gentle convex curve. Think about that for a second. They built a curve to make you see a perfectly straight line. It's amazing. And they did this with the whole temple. The platform it stands on actually curves slightly upward so that from a distance it looks perfectly flat. It's just this incredible insight into both engineering and, well, how our brains work. So how in the world did they figure all this out? Well, you might be surprised to find out that it all started with something incredibly simple. Let's go back and trace where this all came from. It all begins with the post and lintel system. I mean, this is as basic as architecture gets. You have two vertical posts, and you put one horizontal beam, the lintel, on top. You know, think of a simple doorway or even Stonehenge. This simple idea, this is the structural DNA that would eventually become a Greek temple. From there, the evolution was just totally logical. You start with your upright posts, right? Then you lay beams across them to create the roofline. And finally, you add some sloping rafters to make a pitched roof so the rain slides off. And that's it. That simple wooden frame is basically the ghost hiding inside the marble machine of the Parthenon. Now, this whole journey from a simple wooden hut to a perfect stone temple, obviously that didn't happen overnight. It was a slow process of refinement that took place over hundreds of years across three really distinct historical periods. It all kicks off in the Aegean period, back in the Bronze Age, where the earliest ideas started to take shape. Then you get the Hellenic period, or the Classic period. This is the golden age you think of. Athens, the city-states, and all those iconic temples. And finally, you have the Hellenistic period, which is when Alexander the Great's conquests spread this architectural language all across the known world. And that really brings us full circle, doesn't it? It's just a remarkable story of progression, starting with a humble wooden structure of posts and beams and ending up with a stone masterpiece so perfectly refined, it was engineered to look perfect not to a ruler, but to the quirks of the human eye. And all this leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. The Greeks created a formula for timeless beauty with the tools that they had, so it kind of makes you wonder, in our age of algorithms and artificial intelligence, what's the formula for our time? What principles are going to define the masterpieces that we leave behind? Definitely something to think about.